So let's get started. Why should you take a C++ class? You're probably wondering, why should I sign up for the C++ class? And there are a couple answers to that question. C++ is one of the most efficient languages when it comes to memory and speed. So when that's important in things like operating systems, games, machinery, anything that you use in the real world, a lot of those are going to run C++ because it is so efficient. And a lot of video games nowadays are also made in Unreal Engine, which is a C++ based game engine, because it is more efficient and it can make better looking games. Another popular game engine is Unity, which also runs on C, but C#, which is also extremely similar. You could code in C# if you coded in C++. So basically, C++ has numerous applications in the real world. Some of the most famous games that were in it are Fortnite, PUBG, Yoshi's games, Mario games, and so on. So yeah. And if you aren't a big person who plays games and you do more care just about coding and making programs and stuff like that, C++ is the main language used in competitive programming, such as the USACO, which is one of the big competitions. C++ tops Python and Java by a lot just because of speed and memory. So even if you write just as good code in Python and Java, it won't compare to the C++ code because it is so much faster just naturally. So C++ is very useful for efficiency and in these programming tournaments. So what can actually be done with C++? Well, to sum it up, you can do many things in C++, like I just stated. From programming games, doing competitions, the Internet of Things, which is basically just any machinery you use, like elevators, cars. A lot of those are probably going to be using C++, just because you don't need as much memory and you don't have as much memory on things like that. So it turns into what can't be done with it. And although there are probably some specific use cases where it would be slower to use C++, the sky is the limit with C++. And that's just for a couple reasons. Like I said, it's extremely fast, almost like ridiculously fast if you compare it to Python or any other language. And C++ code is also very easy to read, or it's clear to read. It's not as easy to read as Python, but it's clear to read and it's fast and efficient. And like it says here, you don't have to take my word for it. If you look it up, any posts will also say the same thing. And some other useful things about C++ that you can do is there's things like classes and functions, which basically allows you to reuse blocks of code. If you're going to be writing a long program, or you can include other people's header files. And a header file is basically just somebody's code that they wrote. So you can kind of like borrow and use their code in your own code. For things like, I don't know, like bigger math functions. Like if you want to do a big math function, there might be a library out there for it that you can just plug in and it'll do it for you. Can we see it working? So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to show a couple of examples, and each one's going to get a little bit harder as we go on. If you guys want to go ahead and follow along, at the bottom here, I left the C++ compiler link. I'm going to copy it and put it in the chat. Here, let me stop sharing. And then if you want, I'll go to that link and show you guys what we can do there. And it's just basically so you can follow along. Give me a second, just gotta copy the link. Just out of curiosity, have any of you guys ever worked in C++ at all? Or any programming languages for that matter? Or would this be your first programming class?
I've coded before, just not on like Java or Python or C++.
Okay. What languages have you done?
I've done very easy ones.
Okay. So I sent that link in the chat there, and let me go ahead and open up that link as well. And if you look at that link, you've done some Python. Okay, yeah, that'll be good experience for sure if you've done any programming work, or if you have none, this class will work either way. Okay, so if you go ahead and open this up, you can see here, it takes you to this little page, and it puts you out with some text and some kind of instructions up here. Not extremely helpful, but you don't really need much instructions to run this. So it says, write your code in this editor and press the run button to compile and execute it. So down here is basically where you're going to write all of the code that we're going to be going through. And then if you click this button up here to run it, down here in the interactive console, sorry, my computer is going to be slow because I'm running like a bunch of programs right now and screen sharing. But it'll print out what we put here. So in this basic program right now, this cout statement means like C output, kind of is the easy way to think of it. So you're outputting text, and the text you want to output, you're going to put behind these two little carets, and then there, and then it'll output it to the console down here. So that's just a basic little bit of code in C++, and I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the PowerPoint now and keep on going through that. And then if you guys want to follow along, that compiler I sent should work just fine. Okay, so the start. So like I said, this bit of code is kind of like, I guess you could say like the default start for any programmer. If you guys have programmed before, you've probably heard the statement hello world before, or even if you haven't, you may have heard of it. It's kind of just like a basic programmer catchphrase. So to start off a program in C++, kind of the first thing that you have to do, let me see if I can. Can you guys see my mouse or no? If I hover over things?
Mouse.
Okay, so this main function here is basically like it says, the main function of your C++ code. This is where everything's going to happen, and this is where your program always starts. So you're always going to need this, and also a couple other things that you're going to need to start off is your libraries. You don't necessarily need any libraries to code into C++. Libraries you can choose to include, but C++ also has its own already included without having to type this up here. But in this case, we're gonna have to do include IO stream. And like it says in this comment here, this is for the input output stream. So if you wanna output any text, or say you're making a game and you need to take in a number from the user, if you wanna input any text from the user, you need to use this include IO stream up here. And then using namespace std, this just tells the program to use standard namespace. I don't want to get into that too much now, just because it doesn't really mean too much. It just makes it easier to write code in C++ this way. If you didn't use this, it looked the same, but you just have to put std in a bunch of other places where you wouldn't normally have to. So it's just faster to use the standard namespace. So after you have this set up, you have your libraries included with everything that you're going to use. Using namespace standard, you can just always put that automatically. And same thing with your main function. You should always have a main function in your C++ code. And then return 0 is also something that you should have in your main function. And the reason this is because the way C++ runs is it's going to go through your code from top to bottom. So it's going to start at int main and go down. And if it reaches return 0, that means it found 0 errors. But if it gets a different number on the way, like if it returns 1 or 2, that means it hit an error along the way and it didn't make it to the end of the code. So it's basically the way to exit your code and to tell if it ran without any errors. And while this code is not very impressive, it's just putting out hello world, and you can run this on your own on that that website that I showed you, like I did, and it would just do the same thing. And then this little bit here, this endl, starts a new line. I forgot to mention that. So like if you're writing a paper, it'd be like hitting the return or the enter space and going down to a new line. So like I said, while this code isn't very impressive, it's the start, and everybody has to start somewhere. I started here. Everyone before me started there. So yeah. Okay. So on to computing a quotient and a remainder. So this code's going to be a little bit more complicated. Like I said, it's going to keep on ramping up. And the cool thing in C++ is you could use this code to be part of a calculator app, or like kind of like a larger code base. Like I said, how you can reuse parts of C++ code, or like use hashtag include to bring in other codes. You could also do this here and use this to work on an actual calculator. So if you do hashtag IOStream, again, because we're gonna be outputting stuff and inputting stuff. Remember I said C out means C output, and then C in will obviously mean C input. And then if you're outputting things, the easy way to remember it is it's going out, so it should point away from the C out, like in the picture here. And for C in, if you want to take things in, the two arrows need to point like they're eating the C in, if that makes any sense. Like how, kind of like how alligators, when you do greater and less than, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Kind of like that. Okay, so we included IOStream. We're using the standard namespace just to make everything easier. And then our main function. So basically set up everything at this point. And now our next line of code is, this is how you declare variables, basically. So in this case, int means integer or a number, a positive number, or I guess a positive or negative number. So we're gonna go ahead and declare these here: divisor, dividend, quotient, remainder. And these are all, they're kind of empty at this point. They don't have anything in them. They're just stored in memory. So now we're gonna go ahead and go down. Now, since we have them declared and we have their names written down, we're gonna go ahead and tell the user what we want. So in this case, you're gonna tell them to enter the dividend first, just because it makes the most sense. And then we're gonna C in, so take the input from the user of the dividend that they had just sent us. And then now, whatever they just typed in will be stored in the location where dividend is. So now dividend will have the value of whatever the user typed in. And then if we repeat that one more time with the divisor down here, C out, enter divisor. So this will output to the console or the terminal. And we're basically just asking for another variable. And then if we take the input from the divisor, like I said, we're taking input and we're storing it into the divisor variable. We can then go down here and calculate our quotient and our remainder. So in C++, when you divide, it's just integer division. And what integer division means, just means that it's not going to give you any decimal points. It's just going to give you the whole number rounded down. So say you do 7 divided by 2 and get 3.5, it's just going to return 3. And that's just how C++ works. So then if you want to actually find out what the answer to 7 divided by 2 is, you also have to find out the remainder. And in C++, to find out the remainder, what you can do is this percent symbol in C++ actually does not mean percent. It's kind of confusing and kind of trips people up in the beginning. It means modulus, or find the remainder of. So if you were to do 7 divided by, what did I say, 2, you'd have a leftover of 1 in this case. So your remainder would be 1, and then your answer up here would be 3. And then down here, we're going to go ahead and output the quotient. we're going to output quotient equals. And then if you just put the variable name without the quotation marks, instead of saying the text, it'll say the number that's actually stored in quotient. So say you typed in 10, or say the answer was 10, sorry, for the quotient. It would output 10 instead of the word quotient, which is what we want to happen. And then down here, we also have another end line. So that way it just looks nicer for the user to have different outputs on different lines. And then we output the remainder with the same way, cout, quotation marks for our string, and then our remainder variable here. So again, this isn't anything too crazy, but this is just another step up and something that we'll also be learning and working on more in the class. I don't expect you guys to remember all of this now. This is kind of just like just showing what C++ looks like, how it kind of, the logic, how it kind of thinks, I guess, C++. And kind of seeing if you guys are interested in this type of coding. And one more thing, if you've noticed along the way, there's these green bits of text, and this is the only text that isn't included in like actually running the code. So when you run C++ code, use a compiler. The compiler just doesn't look at any of that, and those are called comments. And you can use 2 forward slashes for single lines. And if you want to use double lines, like it says on this side over here, on the right side, you can use /*, type as many lines as you want, and whenever you're done, you just put star / again to end it. So you can write up as many lines of comments as you want in your code using comments. Okay, a pseudo authenticator. So this one is a little bit more complicated and could actually have some, obviously this one specifically won't have any real world use, but these are things that are used in the real world. So the code to the right here is a word-based user selection system. So in the beginning, you have a word list, which is used to validate the input. If the user types one of the words on the word list, it'll authenticate the user. Otherwise, if the user is invalid, the program will end with a short apology message. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Okay, so up here, we have our libraries that we need, IOStream, and then in this one, included string. We don't need to worry about that now. I'm not going to get into that. Using namespace standard, again, that's just to make everything easier. And then we have our main function again, which is again where everything happens. And now this is where C++ starts to get, or some of the, I guess, more difficult things start to occur. So here we have a char, which is a character in C++. So when you look at this, you would say, but these aren't characters, these are full-on words, so we should be using a string. But in C++, you could also do, in this case, he has a double array set up here. So what that means is you set aside 6 memory spots with 20 characters each, which is kind of what you can see here. So there's 6 words, and you can put up to 20 characters in it, is kind of what this is saying. And that might not make too much sense now, just because you haven't worked in C++ that much or learned about arrays yet. But this is one way to do strings in C++, or you could just do string that way and do it like that. But yeah. And then char name, so up to 25 spots for the name. Int found is equal to 0. This is just basically going to be if we found the user. We're going to output who are you. They're going to put in their name. And then here we have what is called a for loop. And basically what a for loop does is it's pretty kind of self-explanatory by the name, I guess. It's going to loop for as long as you tell it to in these parentheses right here next to it. So in this case, we declare an integer I and set it to 0. And basically what this for loop is saying while I is less than 6, keep on going throughout the loop. And this third part over here could be called the step, the increment. And what this does is every time you go through, it's going to add 1 to I. So it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then when it hits 6, it's not less than 6 anymore, so it won't run. But you can basically tell your program how many times you want to look through something. And like in this case, we want to look through our 6 names up here to see if it matches the name they gave us. So what you can do is loop through it 6 times and check each time if it matches a different name. If it does, then you're authenticated, or in this case, you're invited to our next classes. And if your name doesn't match any of these, then you'll go down here and it'll output, sorry, you're not invited. So yeah, this one also isn't too crazy. It's just another basic C++ program. It might look confusing now, but this is all stuff that will be very simple to understand. And even run it inside your head, like kind of how I just look through it and go through and explain it. You'll be able to kind of run it in your head and see what the output would be to the screen. Okay, so that's the end of the PowerPoint, but I also have a couple of code examples I would like to show you guys. So as I was saying, let me start a new screen share. Or before I do that, were there any questions on the PowerPoint, or I can go back to any slides right now? Or any of the programs or anything? Okay, no questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our code examples then. Let me start a new screen share. And as I was saying, C++ is one of the most popular languages because it is so fast and efficient. And it's basically what I do all of my schoolwork in. I'm a college student studying computer science, and basically all the programs we write and everything we write is in C++. So this is one of the programs, projects, or labs that we had to do, whatever you want to call it. And basically in this program, you had to take a file and a PGM file, which is just like a different format for a picture. It's an old format, only for black and white. So you had to take this black and white picture. Well, I got to chat. Okay. Let me know if that answers your question or not in the chat. Okay. Sorry about that. I got to chat. So where was I? Yeah. Okay. So this would take a black and white image, and you had to be able to flip it vertically, horizontally, make it all white, output some information about it, and do some different things with it. So this sounds like a lot, and it is a little bit of kind of a lot. But the good thing about using C++ for this kind of program is, number one, it'll run fast. Number two, you can reuse parts of code using classes and stuff like that. And so it kind of cuts down your writing time and the time of running the program down a lot. So yeah, so let's look at one of these here. Okay. So in this specific example here, here's our libraries up here. input output stream. A string is just basically just a line of text. It can be any length, or it could just be empty. You could also just leave it empty, whatever you'd like. It's just anything to store text. So I included that library in here. This one, don't worry about. It's just the same thing as this one up here, but just for the C and not C++, but don't worry about that. And then using our namespace standard and vector is just another way to store data. Do any of you guys know what a vector is? Those of you who have worked in coding before, have you heard of a vector before? Okay, one of you guys sent me a chat that you have. Okay. Well, basically a vector is just a way to store, say you wanted to store a bunch of numbers and you didn't know how many you wanted to store. You just wanted to keep on adding it to the end. You could use a vector, and a vector basically is just a way to stretch. Think of it as like a container that can stretch and shrink and store a bunch of any variable type in it. So strings, integers, floats, any data type characters. So they're extremely useful. So basically, there's a lot of kind of gritty stuff in here that I'm not going to get into. But basically up here, we have some error checking with the file. And then after we do the error checking, we can go down here and then we can actually go ahead and declare a vector. And then we're going to go ahead and go through. And since we're flipping it, we're going to use a loop and basically just flip all the pixels. So these are just some kind of examples of what you can do in C++. And then you would print it back out in the same format as the file. So the cool thing about this is you can literally, you could run the code on a picture on your computer and actually flip the picture or do something like that. Or get down into anything basically on your computer and modify it, if that makes any sense. So that's another thing that's useful about C++ is you could use it to kind of, when you get more fluent in it, you could use it to kind of speed up tasks that like you don't normally want to do, like downloading files, moving files, sorting things, compiling things. You can use C++ code to make that all a lot shorter and easier, like I do here. So yeah, I've got a couple more things. I want to show you guys also a demo of something that you guys might be able to do by the end of this class. Honestly, I think it's extremely realistic for you guys to do by the end of this class, is to actually write your own game. And I think this is something that a lot of students would probably be interested in. So it's why I kind of included it in here. So basically what this is the welcome screen to a game that I made a little while back. I think a couple years ago, like a year ago, I think now. But basically I wrote this in C#, which isn't C++, but when you guys start actually learning about C++, if you guys take the class eventually, you'll learn that C is the kind of like the main language. Then you have C++ and C#, which are basically the same thing, extremely similar. Like if you know C++, you can code in C# and vice versa, kind of. So this one was coded in C#, for example, but it has working buttons, like a working menu. It has the controls listed here, nothing crazy. But yeah, so let me just go ahead and show what it does. So you start it up and it's just a little game where you just drive a cube down. If you hit something, your cube stops and it resets and just goes right back. So it's kind of like a little endless thing. Or if you fall off, eventually you'll reset and you'll go back to the beginning. And yeah, so it's just a little fun game that you can write. And this is kind of just something simple, but really any kinds of games like side scrollers, first-person shooters, third-person shooters, really any kind of game, honestly. If you can think of it, you could code it in C++, honestly, or C#. If you guys are interested in coding games, Unity is for C#, and Unreal is for C++. And those are two things that, if you do end up taking this course and you are interested in making games, these are probably two things that you're going to want to look into, like downloading. I think they're free, or they have free versions. So, or even before, if you're not quite sure if you want to take the class, even after this demo, something you could do if you're interested in video games is just go up on YouTube and search, like a simple C++ or C# game, depending on which one you get, and you could probably write it out in like an hour with a tutorial and see if it's something that you're really interested in or not. Yeah. All right, give me a second here. All right. Go ahead and pull something up really quick. Give me a second. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and for this one, what you guys can do is, this is actually a program that you guys could probably write and understand today, and I think it's a pretty cool program. It was if you guys are able to write this was one of the first things that I wrote for one of my college classes for one of the assignments that we had to do. This is what I submitted. So you'd be technically taking a college level program or writing a college level program. But anyway, so this is just a program, like it says up here in these comments. A good practice is to put comments basically with your name, what the program is, what it's called, what it's for, and go ahead and put this up here. So this is a program that takes 5 different parameters and returns a checkerboard using for loops. So what that means is we're going to take in 5 different things, and then we're going to output a checkerboard in this case. So we go ahead and declare our starting variables here. We have integers, which are our numbers. So we have the number of rows, the number of columns, the cycle size we want, and then the width, and then our starting character. So when I say checkerboard, it's going to be a checkerboard with letters, just because it's easier to do that in C++, using just the terminal than trying to incorporate visuals and everything right now. That'd be a lot to try to do. And then for our input here, basically what this is this is just one long input statement that's going to take in the input from the user like this. So if it's separated by any white space, so what a white space is just a space, an enter, or yeah, just a space or an enter. So if you were to type in like 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, like that, that's how you would type in the 5 different parameters in this case. And every for loop down here is going to represent a different variable. So what that means is for the row, since we want to make 10 rows, we should loop through it 10 times. If we want our characters to be printed 3 wide, so like 1, 2, 3 A's by 3 A's, then we need to put that in there. And if we want this many columns, we need to put that. And then this is also one more for loop that we need for the width to make it a square. And if you run this code in your compiler, which I will do online, you'll see what I mean when I say that. It makes it like a width, like a square with the letters. Go ahead and start a new share. Okay. Okay, so if you guys go ahead and go on here, and if you go ahead and put this code in, and you were to run it, let's go ahead and do that. Where is that? Oh, up here. Oops. Okay. So let's say you go ahead and run it. So in this case, this is just a program that I was writing for school. So it's not a program that anybody was going to be using. So when you run it, you can see nothing pops up because I didn't put any output statements in this program except for outputting the checkerboard. Just because I knew if you're the only one using the program, you don't really need to. If it's short like this, if you're just typing in 5 numbers, you already know the order of them. But if anybody else was using this program and didn't have the code behind it, they would not know what to do here. So it would basically be a useless program at that point. So keep that in mind when you're writing programs. If you want to, I could add an output statement up here after to make it look a little nicer, but we'll go ahead and type in our numbers. So we'll say it'll have 5 rows, 5 columns, 2, 3 cycle, and 2 width. And our starting character, oh wait, let's see what order. So row, column, starting character, cycle, width. There we go. Okay. So like you can see here, it kind of makes a little checkerboard pattern. So the width is 3, so it's going to make 3 by 3 width squares. And then there will be 5 squares, 5 rows and 5 columns, which you can see here. There are 2, 3, 4, 5. And the cycle is 2, so meaning it'll just go to A, B, A, B, A, B, like a regular checkerboard would, I guess, from white to black, white to black, white to black. So yeah, this is just a simple little program. And if you guys want to go ahead, you guys can kind of add some more stuff. Like you can put in, let's see here, enter row, column, cycle size, and width of square. Okay. Okay. So if you go ahead and put this in and we rerun it, you'll see now it'll actually enter this, which makes for a more user-friendly program. I probably should have put that when I submitted it, but that doesn't really matter that much. One more thing is when we type in our numbers, so in this case, we could even do a bigger one and see how fast C++ really runs on this. We'll say A2, 2. So obviously the screen's not going to be big enough for this, but you can see how fast it's going through and making this 1000 by 1000. I think I put it as square. And if it was on my computer, honestly, it probably would have already run it and printed it out. But since it's online, it's not actually being compiled and run, if that makes any sense on your computer. So it will be a little slower on here than when you're running it on your computer. But as you can see down there, it was extremely fast in printing out all the stuff of being 1000 by 1000 still. Do you guys have any questions or want me to go any over any of the past programs that I've said so far? Or does anybody have any questions about anything like how you could make games, any interest or anything like that?
If I were to take the class, what would we learn during the class?
Okay. If you guys were to take the class, I can go back to the PowerPoint really quick. So you learn a couple things. You learn about obviously the data types in C++. You learn how to do output input, any loops and stuff like that, error checking. Go back to the PowerPoint. It's a lot to list off the top of my head. You learn data structures like array, vectors, stuff like that. It depends. Were you thinking about taking the intro or the advanced class?
If I were to take both.
If you were to take both, okay. So if you were to take both, you kind of go over some things like I just said, like the types of data, all that kind of stuff, just to kind of get into C++. And along the way, there'd be like homework assignments to help you, I guess, make sure that you've mastered the stuff. And then once you've mastered the stuff, towards the end of the class, you guys can start actually working on like projects and programs. And like I said in here, in the PowerPoint, C++ is kind of like an open sandbox. And so if you ask kind of like what will we learn in here, like I can tell you what kind of C++ things you're going to learn, like what concepts you'll learn. But as far as what you'll code, what you're learning here will be applicable to many different programs, games, anything. Like I've only taken classes in school and I've been able to make video games with it. So the things that you learn in the class will just be the C++ concepts and working on projects, but that will be basically applicable to anything. Does that make sense? Is that a good way of explaining it, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat, as well as my email in the chat. And if you got in here late, you can shoot, if you want to, obviously, you can shoot me an email. And I did record this whole demo class. So I can send you the recorder file to that demo class. And then the link I sent is the schedule for the classes when they come out. I'm not quite sure if they added them yet. I know that we have them, but I'm not sure if they're added on here yet. But eventually this link, okay, they did add them, I think. Yeah. So if you go to that link, you'll see the two C++ classes that we have available. One's on Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. So around this time, but on Monday, obviously. And then the other one is on Sunday, so on the weekend if you can't do during the week, from 3 to 4. And they're both 16-week classes, I believe, starting in the middle of February. So if you take that link there, that will be to where you could actually sign up for the classes. And then I'll go ahead and put my email as well. And it just doesn't, if you guys have any questions about the class or anything, you guys can go ahead and shoot me an email. I'm one of the teachers. I'm not the one who developed the curriculum, but if you guys email me, I can direct you to him if you have any questions, any bigger questions, I guess. But yeah, that's about all I have for you guys today. So thank you guys for coming to our demo class. The link and email are in there, and I'll stick around so you guys can get that. And if there are any questions or anything, I'll go ahead and stay after for a little bit.
Oh yeah, one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will we learn Unity during this class or just basics of C++?
Okay, so Unity is C#, and in this class it's C++. So while you won't directly learn Unity, what you learn, like I only coded in C++, but I was able to code in Unity as well in C#. We won't be learning Unity, but you could use it on Unity. One other thing is Unreal is in C++. So technically you could learn to code better in Unreal than Unity. So does that answer your question? No, we won't be teaching it, but you can learn how to do it through this class, I guess,
Thanks.
kind of. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Thank you guys for your time.
Yep, bye.